Hi there, I'm Budda, and you're watching Dr. Guitar, a show for all you guitarists out there. In today's episode, I'm playing my Bassman, my Fender Bassman 59. It is a reissue from the 90s, and it is a super versatile amp. It has two channels, a normal one and a bright one, two independent volumes, and an EQ section with middle, bass and treble and presence. This is the first blues amp, the first electric blues amp, and this gave birth to the Marshall JTM 45, which is basically the same amp with EL34 tubes, but it's the same circuit. Jim Marshall got his hands on a Fender Bassman and just copied it as he could and created Jimi Hendrix Marshall. That's why I bought it, because if it was a Hendrix amp, I need to have it. And I was looking for one for a long period of time until I got this one used from a good friend, a good blues guitar player from Porto. It is a reasonably versatile amp, although it doesn't have reverb, and the EQ is not super intense. I think mine needs to change the tubes because it's overdriving a little too much, but it's the blues sound. As usual, let's take all the EQ off and see what we got left on the amp. So let's hear what we have just with volume. It's a bassy amp. It's extremely bassy, but it has some mid-range. Let us dig in. Let us dig in the mid-range. So the mid control is kind of a treble control because it's high mid-range. It's on 5 more or less because this beat is kind of freaked out. We could play just with the mid-range as usually happens. That's where the guitar tone is usually. So this is not a regular Fender circuit, blackface circuit, because in the blackface amp, in all the amps, you have, if you take off the bass, treble and mid, you don't have any sound. So you have kind of a 3 gain controls. You have the gain for the treble, the gain for the mids, and the gain for the bass. This amp is more like a Marshall, and it should be because it's how it was designed and how Marshall started. So you have a basic tone, even with the EQ cut off, and then you can add something to it. You can brighten the amp a little bit, or you can even give it a little more bass. So with the mid-range, we're good to go. And if you use the volume on the guitar, you might clean up the amp, and it cleans up really good. And you have your clean sound, clean channel, and dirty channel with one cable, one guitar, and one amp. And we're only on 7, but from here to 12, I think this goes to 12, yeah. From here to 12, it's just more drive. It's not that much of an increase in volume. Fucking good amp. Let's turn it up to 12, why not? And the bass is still reasonably focused, although it's a vintagey bass. It's not a modern tight bass, but it's still reasonably focused, even with the amp on 12. And that's because we have the bass knob turned off. If we turn on the bass, it will crap out and become a fuzz. And this is for sure the loudest I've ever played with this amp. I usually set it the max at 6 or 5, but I play it with both channels. So let's keep on listening to what the EQ section does. This middle knob needs to be fixed because it's a little loose, so this is the minimum, and it has a loose thing. I need to screw it up. Let's hear the bass. So it's more of that bottom end. The treble. Now it misses the mid-range. It's too sharp, and it is only on 7. And the presence, what it does, it usually brings the sound a little forward. It has something to do with the power amp. It's not in the preamp circuit. Usually it brings the sound forward, but since we don't have any high on the amp, you don't really listen to it. But let's grab a little mid-range. little treble. Usually, if you use the bass knob properly, you can dial in the compression on the amp. That's how I use in my Lone Star, in my Mesa Boogie Lone Star. It's kind of, the sound is too attacky, it has too much transient this way. It has too much of the front of the note. If you move the bass a little up, we'll get, it softens the amp. It's subtle, but it changes the feel of the amp. And of course, if you overdo it, it compresses a lot more, it overdrives a lot more. It should be called the headroom knob instead of being the bass knob, but it's usually what it does. So whenever I'm playing live with the amp and I feel I don't have enough headroom, I cut the bass as much as I can, and it gives me back some of the headroom. Let's hear the bright channel, because this amp has 2 channels and it was supposed to be a 2 voicing amp, so that it has a bright channel and a normal channel, as all vintage amps used to have. Even with black faces, they don't have the normal and the brilliant channel, but they have a bright switch on every amp, which makes it a 4 input amp. So let's hear the bright with the same exact settings. So it is exactly what it is supposed to be. It's a brighter channel with a lot more high end and high mid-range, nasally, and a lot more aggressive. The beautiful thing that this 4 input amps have is that you can use a jumper cable, as I used in my Marshalls, and blend the 2 channels. So if we plug into the high input, the one which is the loudest, and we use the jump cable, we now have 2 volumes to use, and we can have a little more of the brightness from the bright channel, or a little more of the normal channel to our sound, but they are feeding each other, so this is also overdriving the power amp. it's a beautiful amp. It's sounding a little darker than usually. This is my regular setup. It's how I usually set it. But in this room it's sounding a little darker, so I'll probably would give it a little more treble and a little more. Yeah, kind of. But I'm not in a great place relatively to the amp. Probably if I was standing here, I would have a different perspective, or if I was standing up as usual. So it changes a lot. But in general, it's a great all-around amp, and it isn't the Fender stereotype. It's the tweed Fender stereotype. But we are used to think about Fender as being a great clean amp, like a twin reverb or a deluxe reverb, or even the Hot Rod series or the Blues Junior. And this is a lot more mid-rangey, a lot more Marshall-y than a Fender. The 4x10 combination, it's my favorite combination ever. I love the 10-inch speaker because it's a lot more focused, a lot more mid-rangey, a lot more guitar-like sounding. The 12-inch usually is a little deeper and a little higher. It has a little more treble and a little more bass, which makes me confused sometimes. I prefer the focused mid-rangey tone. That's why my favorite guitar cabinet is the Mesa Boogie Lone Star 4x10 with Eminence 50 on it, special design. This one has blue something. I will write it. And it is a really good. When I bought it, it had a lot more headroom. Since I played it, I think I've broken in I hope the tubes, and I'll probably change it, and we'll do another video with new tubes, so we can find out if the tubes were fucked up or if I fucked up the amp. But it's still a great platform, a great amp. It will only be better if it had reverb. It will be the perfect blues amp. But now it is a really great blues amp and a really great rock amp. It's not tight. It's not heavy rock amp, because it drives a lot, but it gets really quick into fuzz territory. But it's a super great vintage blues amp, and it's amazing to play with the volume on the guitar. So well, that's it. I hope you have liked the show. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see each other next week. Bye bye.